Hey everyone, welcome back. Tanshiki Ramble. My name is Abigail, or Abby. Abigail Dishnikashon. I am Métis and autistic and love talking about autism stuff. And this is where I do that, apparently in my kitchen today. And one of my special interests as an autistic person is Percy Jackson. I've already done a video talking generally about season 2 of Percy Jackson, or at least my personal feelings on it, but I've also wanted to go more into the changes from book to television because there are a lot of changes, and a lot of them have been kind of controversial from what I've seen. I have particularly seen people say that the last episode is quite bad, specifically because of what happened with Zeus and Thalia. I personally don't mind most of the changes. I actually really love the show. And so yeah, I've wanted to talk about that. And it's been hard for me to script this, so it keeps getting put off. There's just so much to talk about, and unfortunately, I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I've been really struggling with how to word it, what to include, wanting to make sure that I make my points clearly. And then I came across a thing on Tumblr about Harry Potter and nostalgia, and that kind of made me think a lot about what's been going on with the Percy Jackson adaptation. Me being me and Tumblr being Tumblr, good luck finding anything, I now can't find that post. But basically it was one of those things about, was Harry Potter ever good, combined with why alternative series aren't hitting for people now the way that Harry Potter hit for them when they were 13, and it's because we are now adults and nothing will ever hit like that because we're not 13 anymore. You're chasing a specific high from a specific point in your life, and in some ways, that is probably an idealized memory that nothing will ever live up to. And I personally think that might be part of why so many people are criticizing the Disney Plus adaptation of Percy Jackson for the changes. And please take all of this with a grain of salt. This is basically just going to be a scripted ramble of me speculating on why maybe some people are so opposed to the changes. I personally never see nostalgia mentioned as a factor in anything other than Harry Potter and maybe the occasional Disney movie live action remake, but only in that it's nostalgia cash grab. So this is really just going to be me going, hey, why don't we discuss the nostalgia factor with this franchise or other franchises? So that's what this will be, specifically more so addressing Percy Jackson and also a couple other things that I can think of from my personal favorites as a kid. So yeah, I read Percy Jackson in full for the first time in 2020. I read The Lightning Thief in high school, but I was fully into some different series and also getting into musicals a lot. So for whatever reason, as much as I wanted to continue the series, I just didn't. Still not sure why. Sometimes I wish I had gotten into it sooner, but it is what it is. It just wasn't the right time for me at that point. I was a little more solidly into different fandoms. Watching Lord of the Rings Extended Edition every other week while getting the next Warrior Cats book every single time that they released, and other series. And so for me, 2020 was just the right time, and I've loved it since. And so yeah, I came to the Percy Jackson fandom when I was already 25. There is basically no nostalgia for me. I watched the show, and I'm not seeing a million changes to a story I first loved 20 years ago when I was like 10 or 11. I am seeing a different take on a story that I've recently come to love that's been developed for a different medium. And so I am personally approaching it from my adult brain that I majored in theater, and I've got a love for critical analysis, so I am just examining it in a totally different way. Like, there are changes that I don't think work, but to me, they're not as awful as some people make them out to be. For the most part, I can see why they made those changes. A lot of it, I think, does come down to time constraints, and time constraints, for me, is just an issue I have with literally every show at this point. Why do we only get like 8 to 10 episodes a season? This is stupid. Yeah, and it has also been 20 years since Rick Riordan wrote the books. He's had a lot of time to think on things and go, what if I had done this instead? And he's probably having fun exploring that. I don't know to what extent he's involved in the writing, but I do know that he and his wife are producers, and he has writing credits for the first 2 episodes of season 1 and the first episode of season 2. And he also created the series Bible, as they call it, so he definitely has influence. To me, the characters still feel accurate to how they are in the books, for the most part, but Tyson's absolutely perfect. I just scrolled too far down in my script, sorry. And it's absolutely not comparable to the films, as many fans say the show is, at least in my view. That said, Guardians of Ga'Hoole. I adored those books when I was younger. I have never hated a film adaptation more. I would watch The Lightning Thief and Sea of Monsters again willingly before putting that movie on. Like, at least those movies got the name right. And also the basic plot points right, more or less. Sea of Monsters, not as much. I recently reread the entire series for Guardians of Ga'Hoole, and yeah, it didn't hit the same way it did when I was a kid. I still enjoyed it, but instead of being excited with the adventure, I was bouncing between going, holy shit, this is so much darker than I remembered, and having moments of, wait, what is the timeline actually here? Because certain character ages didn't fully make sense, but it's fine. I'm specifically thinking about how when they find Eglantine, that's when she finally has her first meat on bones ceremony, but like, there's no way it's only been like less than a month or whatever it was for characters to have those ceremonies, but it's probably because they found her so late. I just went off my script on a little ramble. Anyway, it's fine. And I feel like this would be my experience for a lot of stories that I liked as a kid. Like, there are things in Warrior Cats that I just remember and go, oh, that relationship was messed up. And there are certain things in Percy Jackson that I find questionable with character ages and relationships. But anyway, Guardians, yeah, I loathed the movie. I loved the books as a kid, and I largely enjoyed rereading them as an adult, even though they didn't hit the same because it's been 20 years. I am not the same person that I was then. And I honestly don't know how I would feel if Catherine Lasky announced a reboot television series that would be more faithful, and then it came out and, while in some ways being more faithful, also included a bunch of changes, even if those changes were largely related to time constraints like most of the ones in Percy Jackson are. I imagine that part of me would feel betrayed because it wouldn't be the story that I remember. Even though, in a way, even the books as they aren't really the story that I remember because it's been so long, and a lot of that experience of reading them is idealized memories. And yeah, none of this is to say, of course, that people are inherently wrong for not liking the changes in Percy Jackson. Everyone has different tastes, that's fine. My partner loves the films, partially because there's a Fall Out Boy song in the second one, and also because that's the version that he experienced first. I personally watched them and question how anyone thought there could ever be a third film after they so heavily ruined the continuity in the second one and yet still sequel baited for a third. I'm not saying that nostalgia is the only reason people dislike the changes, or that that's bad as well. I'm just speculating after thinking about it that maybe it's a contributing factor to some people, maybe treating the changes like they're the worst things ever, or even going so far as to say that this series is even more inaccurate than the films, which is an opinion. The films that revealed the identity of a certain character way too early and inherently destroy the coolest reveal in the last book. Yeah, I personally can't forgive that. All of this is really to say that, like I said at the beginning, I've been seeing the nostalgia thing come up a lot for Harry Potter, and people saying that nostalgia is the only reason people think Harry Potter was ever good, but I never see that go around for other series. And in the context of the Percy Jackson series, I personally think that maybe examining how nostalgia can impact feelings on adaptations 20 years later should maybe be included in discussions around the changes, especially since I know for a fact that this nostalgia thing is gonna come up even harder when the Harry Potter reboot actually airs and inevitably fails, since half the fans left because Rowling's the worst, and the fans that are left are now mad that Snape is black. I am so glad I got out of that fandom. It is probably more toxic than Star Wars at this point. But yeah, I really think that when it comes to adaptations of anything that we loved as children, we should be considering that maybe the reason that sorry, my phone just gave me a low battery warning and that just confused the heck out of me. Where was I in my script? I am not going to edit this out because I am too lazy to do editing. But yeah, I really think that when it comes to adaptations of anything that we loved as children, we should be considering that maybe the reason we struggle with changes made in those adaptations is the nostalgia part. No matter who is cast or even if it were done exactly like the book, I don't think an adaptation of Bruce Coville's Unicorn Chronicles would hit for me the same way the books did when I first read them, because I will never again be 15 and realizing the absolute horror and tragedy of how a few bad decisions by people in the past led to literal centuries of generational trauma. And I really need to do a video on this series at some point because this series is so underrated. Rereads don't hit the same as the initial reads did since I'm an adult now, but this one is there with The Last Unicorn for me, as finding parts of it hurt deeper as an adult with better understanding on just what certain things mean. Why is my computer making weird noises? Probably still going to talk about some of the specific changes in season 2 at some point, but not until after April. I've already started scripting some of the 30 Days of Autism Acceptance videos, so hopefully I'll be able to get them all out on time, and if so, then I guess I will be seeing you all in 2 days. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I hope you understood and enjoyed this ramble and that my point made sense. I feel like I didn't, but I tried. This is the kind of topic where I have an idea that makes sense in my head, but I'm not sure how best to communicate it clearly, and I'm just so used to being misunderstood that I just go off trying to clarify and worry I made it harder to follow in those efforts. I probably did. So hopefully it made sense. Yeah, perfectionist, but not always. Anyway, thanks for watching. Merci pour ton temps. And I will see you again for the 30 Days of Autism Acceptance in like 2 days, hopefully. Bye.